I want to talk a little bit about evaluation, which is one of the big strengths, I think, of Toastmasters. And I want to talk a little bit about methods of evaluation, perhaps. Now, right off the get-go, let me just say that I've done a fair number of evaluations in my 3 years. I'd like to think that I'm a good evaluator, or that I try to be a good evaluator. Credential-wise, I suppose, the best I've ever done is I've placed second place for a division, which is Northern BC. So I don't know if that means anything in the grand scheme of things, but I have my thoughts and I'd like to share them and take what you will out of them. Now, there's a couple different methods that you can use for evaluation. The first thing I would say is that it's important to remember that evaluation is a speech as much as anything else we do. Granted, it is to some extent impromptu. You don't know what the person is going to be presenting. You don't know what your thoughts are going to be on that. But that being said, it still follows the format of the normal speech. That is, it has an introduction, hopefully that is compelling and gripping for your audience. It has a body that has a number of points, and it has a conclusion that wraps that all up logically. This can be difficult to accomplish, but that's what we try to do. Now, there are a number of different tools that we can use within evaluation. One of which is, and the simplest, is just use the evaluation guide that you're given. Every speech, every ed session, everything that we do in Toastmasters has some kind of written evaluation guide that you can use, that you can consult, and generally we will walk you through questions that are specific to the speech. So, for example, it might ask you to comment on the speaker's use of notes, or it might ask you to comment on how the speaker used their body language within the speech. And those can give you hints or starting points about what you want to speak about. Now, other things that you can do, one technique I've seen used quite frequently in Toastmasters is what would you call it? The group approach, perhaps? Let's call it that. And what that is basically is you start off with your positive point. You start the ball rolling. You make a statement about the speech. I thought that it was a well-constructed speech. It had all the necessary elements. It was interesting, compelling. And then what you do is you ask the audience a question. So you pick somebody in the crowd at random and you say, Joe, can you share your thoughts? What did you think about the speaker's use of gestures? And you can use that and then try to bridge the comments that they make back into your evaluation. So what this does is it forces your audience to listen to you, and it also gives you ability to kind of, buy yourself some time, integrate bridging instead of having to come up with the points yourself. Now, it doesn't save you from what happens if the audience doesn't have an opinion on the speech. You still need to have some content to work with, but it can be a technique that can work for you. Another thing I like to do is I like to compare the speech with other ones that I've heard. I like to think to myself, what would make this speech the best speech of this kind that I've ever heard? What would make this a compelling, wonderful speech? And I try to approach it from that end. So rather than getting caught up in all the things that the person did well, ask yourself, what could they have added to it that would have made it a better speech? What could they have done? Could they have perhaps over-dramatized it? Could they have used different words? Could they have used some kind of personal analogy? Lots of things you can do there. And I think it's important when you do evaluations to remember that you are not just giving feedback to the speaker. Yes, it's important to recognize the speaker. Yes, it's important to make them understand that you appreciated their speech. But you're also giving the evaluation for the benefit of the people that are listening. So try to give them something that they can work on as well. If you're going to suggest something, for example, give something concrete. So one that comes up quite a bit is eye contact, which is something I personally struggle with when I speak. So one thing I like to suggest for people is, instead of saying, you know what, you need to improve your eye contact, which doesn't really give them anything specific to latch onto, how about you say something like, you know what would work really well is if, when you're looking around the room and you're talking to the different people, if you held that eye contact long enough that you felt that connection with them, or you felt that person start to nod with you, that you address the point that you were making specifically to that person. I think that is an effective way of approaching eye contact. Now, you got to understand that the advice that you give is not going to be a fit for everybody. Just like when you get evaluated by other people, you're not always going to appreciate what they have to say. Sometimes they're going to stand up there and they're going to say 5 points, and you're going to agree with all 5. You're going to walk away feeling great. Sometimes they're going to get up there and you're going to give you 3 or 4 points, and you're not going to agree with a single one of them. That is entirely fine. One thing that Toastmasters will teach you is that you should chew the meat and spit out the bones, to use the old expression. Take what you can from it, try to learn from it, try to take it at face value, but don't get so hung up on the fact that whether you agree or disagree with everything. And similarly, if you give people advice in a speech, don't expect that it's going to click for them everything that you're saying, or that you're going to be right all the time, because you're not. It doesn't matter if you've been doing evaluations for 30 years, you can still get up there and speak a whole bunch of garbage, to make a long story short. So don't get so hung up in it. Try to begin on a positive, try to end on a positive. I have seen many evaluations that were destroyed by blindly following this method, but in general it's a good one to follow. It's always good to recognize that the person has taken a big leap in getting up there. Whether it's your first speech, whether it's your 100th speech, it still takes guts to prepare, to get everything together, to stand up in front of that group of people and to deliver it. And you know what? Even if they gave the most horrible speech you've ever heard, you've got to recognize and appreciate that they had the guts to get up there, that they tried, and that you need to leave them feeling good so that, if nothing else, they'll try again. And that's not to say that every speech you're going to give is going to be good. Everybody has off nights, but try to recognize when a person makes an effort, when they do go out of their way to prepare, when they go to their way to try to develop something, when they try something that's out of the ordinary that perhaps didn't work for them, but you know what, recognize it. Try to put yourself in their position. Try to do unto others, so to speak. And if you see things that you like when you're out there, when you see other techniques used for evaluations, you know, I language, for example, is very effective. I feel that, I believe that, I thought that. You know, not that your speech was bad. No, I felt that your vocal variety could have used some improvement. I thought there was some room there to use an analogy or use a story, or perhaps, you get what I'm saying. Try not to be, your speech was this, your speech was that. No, it wasn't. That was your impression of it. It is your opinion of what the speech is. Now, that's not to say that you don't have some credentials in speaking, that you are not an intelligent, rational human being, that you are not a member of Toastmasters and have not been working towards becoming an effective evaluator. So I know some people like to say that evaluations are just opinions. Yes, they're just opinions, but they're considered opinions. They're informed opinions. They are carefully considered opinions. They are not just somebody off the edge of their desk beaking off about what they thought of the speech or not. So those are my quick thoughts on evaluation. There are tons more. There are workshops and ed sessions and all sorts of stuff. I thoroughly believe that you could go out every night of the week for the next 30 years, do evaluations, and there's still lots to learn. But those are some thoughts of mine. I hope that, again, you can chew the meat and spit out the bones, that you can find at least one thing of value in my thoughts.